7:30.
You're doing such a good job.
Okay, you said about Okay, our first order of business, we're missing one, but I'm sure he'll be back momentarily, is to figure out if we want to change the plan of action and continue this conversation. And you said you had something to offer?
I would like to make a comment, suggestion, and maybe I'll direct it to Mr. Smith. Since, and I totally understand that you guys have a much bigger picture than me. As the Board of Education, our obligation is education and the benefit of our kids. The next three items on our facilities list, which are we're dealing with the $13 million project. And I know you guys rely on Davenport, and they probably give you good financial advice, sound advice, but let me make a suggestion to you. If you, I guess from a board, we're looking at, and I guess you're going to define the obligation of county government as far as schools or whatever. We're going to always find that on the meeting. So that we can move ahead on these three projects, would it be, I guess from the board, we're looking, if we're willing to put up 6.5, county, we've asked the county for 6.5. Okay, we've kind of come to an impasse that maybe it would be better if we kept the cash on hand for whatever needs we may have in the future, because we don't know what the future holds. But if we were to go out and secure a $13 million loan, would the school system would be on the hook for half the payment, let the county pick up half the payment? Is that a possibility, Mr. Smith?
Well, I mean, I obviously can't speak to the board because that was something they'd have to approve, but let's just talk about it in theory. You know, if you're talking about a vehicle in which to finance, the answer would be yes. Now, with debt, and I would look to my finance officer, with debt, we would hit the sales tax first, 40 and 42 first, if we have debt for schools.
That is correct.
See what I'm saying?
Yes.
It hits that first by law. Boom. So what I'm saying is I don't want to walk out of here and anybody think, oh, the county's going to come over here on the general fund side, taxpayer side, and say, we have a payment of $500,000, not that that's what it would be, but that we would make it. It hits that first, which then begins to deplete that on an annual basis. And that's why you have to look at the trends of sales tax, as I think Mr. King stated earlier. What is it doing? What do we expect it to do? Those type of things, you know.
But for instance, let's just simplify it. Say if Wayne County government, Wayne County Public Schools go to the bank today and they borrow $10 and our payment's $1.
Yes.
Can the county make 50 cents of that payment and we make the other 50 cents?
I'd want to talk to Davenport. I would really want to talk to Davenport and talk to the LGC, the Local Government Commission, on how that's structured.
But I think that would be a way for we as a board, and I'm probably speaking out of turn because I'm chairman, I just saw his hand flash over there, but you know, I don't know that our board would be willing to, I mean, we haven't even talked about it, because we had talked about taking the money straight out of our fund balance.
I think it's something that we absolutely, in talking with Davenport and Local Commission, because we talk within the Treasurer's Office continually, is that we would put that in our menu of things that we would ask and say, okay, what does this do to us for the next 5 to 10 years? Is that smart? Is that a good move? Or do we, you know, so I'm saying, yes, you put that in there as an option and ask the question. So I would say yes to the option and then say, is that the best way, or is there a better way to do it so that we continue to leverage for future debt or future payments?
Because I guess if we don't approach it that way, and if we look at, for instance, going and borrowing the $13 million, and I'm seeing that we're on the hook for all of it. You see what I'm saying? I mean, if we don't work out some agreement with the county to deal with that specific loan or that specific project amount of $13 million, then I don't see any other way other than the county school system is only for the whole amount.
But when
Okay.
you look long-term over financing, and I know I'm getting in the weeds a little bit
Yeah,
here,
you're-
but when you get into financing long-term, and again, and I would love to take this last, if the chair will allow this last Davenport plan and give you guys, and then at some point have them come and just talk in general about it to somebody. There is entrance of cash on an annual basis by the county in the financing. It is absolutely there. So we will be making part of payments because sales tax and property tax that come on the county side are absolutely being entered into part of pay-as-you-go for community college, school. It's being entered into that discussion, and it's in that plan to use some of our cash.
But that's
It
in
is
place
in
now without, if we don't get a loan, we're getting that now.
Okay.
Some of
We'll
it
get
will
out
be
the
new
weeds.
dollars.
I want you to hang on to the concept that you're probably going to get farther, easier if you're working together than separately.
Mm-hmm.
But let's figure out what we're doing with this section. We don't have all that much time, and y'all are opening up more topics for conversation than we can get to today. So what was your suggestion about what we focus on in this piece?
Well, I think, my own opinion, I want to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Everett said, though. I think we need to, when we say we need to look at resolutions and COPs and bonds and all that stuff. We can't do anything about that. We don't
Right.
have any input on how you borrow the money. We put our plan out on the table, which is not just 3 projects. It's the new school at Grantham and later Spring Creek School. Those are our needs. We don't need to just come here and whack our plan in half and say, well, how about let's take care of $12 million on these projects, and we'll come later on and talk about Grantham and Spring Creek and all that.
Okay.
While we're all here, we need to kind of come up with a plan of where we're going to go forward, and let the county commissioners and decide how much and how they could finance. So, as Mr. Weber said, if you can't do it at all, if you can't do it at all, then our priorities might change, because we can't. If you can do all these projects, then these are what we want to do.
So should we focus our conversation right now on making the renovations happen? Would that be the most useful thing for the group? And then we're talking about the construction later? Sir?
Yeah, that's.
Getting to the agenda, 10:30, clarifying the roles and responsibilities, 10:30, and we're at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we have hit a lot of these bullet points under 10:30, and what I'm feeling or hearing from Chairman Grantham is that now we're sort of trying to create a hypothetical timeline. And of course, that was well taken when Member Radford was asking the question straight out. What is the timeline? Is it now, or is it 6 months, or is it a year? So my question is here, in order for the school to be built and renovated and operational by what date? I heard at the break we're talking about from Member Flowers is that it could take 2 years, it could take a year. So the timeline for this commission, for the majority of the commissioners, came out in December. So we're ready to work with the school board. So it's 11 o'clock, and I'm sort of under consensus is that we would work on this 11 o'clock to lunch is to create a hypothetical timeline. Now,
For the renovations.
Now, how do we get that done? I'm not sure, but
Okay.
but we're ready to set a timeline.
Yes, but I thought before the break, my chairman asked that we not hurry by the issue that was on the table to meet some agenda. Either we're going to serve the agenda or the agenda will serve us. And I was hoping that we could deal with what we were talking about before the break, before we stick to some agenda and have not addressed the issues at hand.
So what issues in particular do you want to make sure that we cover?
With the very issue that our chairman just mentioned, so we're going to run into what's on the agenda about the roles or whatever, and we've not dealt with where are we going with this. I know we're not here to make a decision, but I'm seeing, now what I see in just after the break is we have this side with dealing with the top 3 priorities for central attendance schools. and separating the building of the new school. Then after the break, I'm hearing that we don't need to separate them. So, and if we're going to go on to something else, I'm still lost.
Okay, and I thought, I heard that we would separate them, but let's hear your comment.
Really direct, Ms. Smith, merely as a point of clarification on a statement that you made earlier, basically in two places. One is a good time to borrow money, or cops, or looking at investigating our ways. And my question was why not cash as applied to Davenport recommendation? I would like in the future to be able to see more information about that as to why cash and why borrowing. Because I think we're losing some insight from the information about sales tax and what burden you're saying the county of that would have adhered to. The other question is this: does not the community college receive any lottery funds?
No.
They do not.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
I thought the colleges, I'm talking about out of state lottery funds, that the colleges did get some lottery.
Not that the county managed.
No,
Not
if
that
it
the
is,
county
it's separate, does not run through us at all.
Okay, all
It
right.
goes
Well,
straight to
if they did, you made a statement that you didn't see spending any of your fund balance because you had a boiler that was coming up
Right.
for an excessive amount at the community college. Well, when we were first allotted lottery funds, it basically had to be spent for school construction. Now there's a little bit more flexibility with that. My
Okay, I'm going to
question-
intervene unless you get us back to the,
I'm-
out of the
I'm
weeds.
I'm about through.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
My question is if that's the case, could it not be investigated to see if they could spend some of those funds towards
They do not
that?
have capital dollars from the state for that energy plant. We
Okay.
confirmed they do not. The only
Okay.
dollars it would have to be
So you
county
would-
dollars or dollars borrowed.
So, and you could not borrow money to buy a boiler at the school?
You could.
Okay?
You could do that.
But you've already decided you're going to spend cash out of your
No,
allotment?
that was one of our options we looked at in trying to mix. Some of it actually in our plan, Pam, was part of a borrowing.
It has borrowing money.
Yeah, borrowing money.
Okay, well, I got the impression about what you said was that you couldn't spend a percentage of that because you're going to have to spend it on that boiler.
No, what I was trying to say is that you have other projects coming up pretty quickly, is what I was saying. And we actually, in just one option, looked at borrowing that as part of some upgrades, a part of, I think, the project at Grantham. And this was after doing the 3 renovations, then the new school, the sewer line, the energy plant, but these were borrowings. Now, it required some input of cash by the people into the projects, but it's actually, it's just one option. So
Okay,
we're looking at
well, I stand to be corrected then. That was just the
Okay.
impression I got from what you said.
Thank you for asking that. Yes, sir?
For clarity, distribution of funds from the lottery in 2012, 51.9% teacher salaries, 23.5% school construction, 14% pre-K, and 7.2% needed base college scholarships. And 2.5% was the UNC need-based financial aid. But the teacher salaries in 11 was 50% and went up to 51.9%. But school construction in 2011 was 40%, which dropped to 23.5%.
I understand.
That was in 11 verse 12, but the needed base college scholarships, that was the only thing to do with the lottery on colleges was 7.2%.
Okay, we've got two more comments over here, and then I'm going to ask you, what is it you really want to talk about here? Okay.
I want to continue on this. I mean, I can't quite understand why we are so stuck on this. Guys, this is pretty simple. We have a capital improvement plan that we just approved. We agreed to borrow the monies to build school and do these 3 capital improvements. And we've already agreed to that. That's our capital improvement plan. All we're talking about is separating out the 3 improvements to schools, borrow those monies now, start that project now, as we continue to discuss the building of new schools. I don't understand why that's complicated. I want to see shovels hit the ground now on those 3 improvement projects: Spring Creek, Charles B. Aycock, and the central attendance area. We need those projects going now. We can borrow the monies almost within a matter of a few months and start those construction projects. as we continue to discuss the school, the building of the new school, whether or not we have one school, two schools, whether or not we have a separate campus, all those items we can continue to discuss. But I don't understand why it's so complicated. Just
Okay, well, we're gonna see if we can separate them out.
It's separate.
Your comment.
Okay, can we not, Joe, chew, chewing gum and walk at the same time?
I think we can.
Thank you. Okay, my concern is, don't stop the discussion about borrowing. Why can we not use our fund balance, as we suggested, get those projects moving now? We don't want you to borrow money for that. We want to pay cash for it now. And while we're doing that, then you borrow the money for Grantham and any other school. Do it all simultaneously, okay? But let us use so we can start now. We need those projects, not next year. We need them now.
I agree.
Okay, let's get specific. Let's break out the renovations for right now.
Yeah.
Assume that you've got many more conversations to be had, and let's start it, so if it was groundbreaking on renovation, what has to happen and in what order, and as we go along, we'll figure out who has responsibility for which phase of this, so that y'all can get moving.
Why are you writing that? May I ask the question? Why you're writing?
Yeah.
And this is to the school board. I'm looking at Ms. Thelma's list here, and I'm looking at how they're on the sheet. Now, if they're just on the sheet because you always have to put one before you put two, or does this reflect any priority list? It does not reflect. Does it reflect the priority because Central Tennessee is first, Spring Creek is next, Charles is next, and then Grantham? Is that a priority? It's in rank order then.
So what has to happen first in order for y'all to get down to that celebration when you actually start changing your buildings?
I want to ask one question about county manager.
Does it relate to this?
Yes, it's right. It's about this.
Okay.
It's the second part of this.
I'm just trying to keep
It's the
focused.
second. No. I'm shifting. I'm not shifting.
Okay.
Based upon you're down the road thinking about the best ways to borrow or to spend. Is it easier to, is it easier to separate out, I can see that the Central Tennessee is involved in three different schools, looks like, at least three different schools, or at least two, but, and as you're looking at that, and this is the start of a school board, and are we looking at maybe dividing any of that funding to make it easier to cash or borrow? I mean, you know, it's like if you're just as a private individual, if you're going to deal with more than one project, you might have to borrow some, pay cash for some. And I would just want to ask that question. Is there any rationale for dividing some of those into pockets of cash or borrowing, therefore to easily facilitate getting to where we're going?
My answer would be possibly, and the reason being is because you may have, and just based on the information the schools have given us, some of the projects, I would consider them small projects. And they may be projects that you would cash out over a year or say 24 months, that you could cash some of those things out. But you have to still look at the bigger picture of the next 5 years, because though we know we both have money in the bank, how far can you make that go to leverage future debt? Because you don't want to, as my dad would say, hamstring yourself on the borrowing later because you have no money to leverage that future debt.
Now, I will shift the question to the board for just a second, to the Board of Education. You look at CBA costs, for instance. Now, I've been in and out of CBA costs for years. It's been a while, and you have to pardon me, I thought the cafeteria had been renovated a couple of years ago, Mr. Bart. I really had. I mean, until I went back up this year for something, I realized it was the same cafeteria. So, Mr. West, this is just the kind of question I'm asking. In your heart of hearts, if you couldn't have it all, and it came down to cash or borrow, and then it delayed, which would be your toppest priority, say a CBA class. Keeping in mind, as I understand the school, the students will go back in a classroom someplace and be taught. But that cafeteria is, you can't feed them all in one day. That's the
Okay,
way I remember it.
I understand why you're
Okay,
passionate
now
about
I shall
that,
stop.
but we
I
don't.
shall stop. I'll
Okay.
stop. I'll stop and let you go on. I just wanted to go ahead and lay that out. These guys
You
will
put
think
it on
about what
the-
I'm talking about later. That's all right. I'm finished.
Okay, we cannot get to that level of
No, no,
detail
that's
today.
fine. I just want to throw that out.
Yes.
Just to talk about one of the things they brought up a while ago was the priority on these items on this plan.
Let's not talk priorities. Let's
Well-
talk total amount of money and how we're going to get
That's what
there.
I'm getting at.
Okay.
We don't need to break this out into priorities into the individual projects or even the 3 projects up front, because like Mr. Lee Smith said, we need to look at the plan down the road for 4 or 5 years, which will include the new school. And if you want to look at priorities for what the actual critical needs are, the reason these things were put on here in the order that they are was because we didn't have any, at the time, any building new schools was something that we didn't see any way in the near future to make that happen as far as money. Now we can make it happen. But the reason, if you go out and look at the school at Grantham, and you see people parking up and down the highway in the mornings and the afternoons, and you see the buildings built in the 1930s and 40s, and 2 of them, when you go to Spring Creek and you see 300 people over capacity, it'd be hard to say that you do that building these classrooms at ACOG will be any more priority than those are.
Okay, and that's part of the reason why we can't talk priority today. So, remind me, we were talking about $13 million to do renovations, is that correct? And the conversation we just had told us that it is possible to use different strategies of funding for different pieces of this. But fundamentally, these 2 boards need to figure out how you're going to get at the 13 million, right? And we don't want to take positions right now. We just want to figure out what decisions need to be made, who needs to make them in order to get there.
I want to talk about the 13 million, and that's all.
In what way?
What's on the board?
Well, I mean,
How we
arguing
gonna
about
fund
the
it?
amount of it?
Well, you gonna tell me what I'm talking about?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I mean, is the 13 million
Get a
correct?
job to tell you what you're talking about.
Absolutely, 13 million is
Okay.
correct. That's the number for the
Can we
first
figure out the
project.
13 million before we figure out anything else?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Okay? I got heart conditions, so don't get me.
Okay.
Like, me and my brother member over there, we always say, I sound like a mad one, no.
Passion's a good thing. Passion's a good thing.
It appears that Mr. Smith is saying to borrow the money and we make the payment on it. If we're doing that, in fact, the county's not helping us at all with ad valorem tax money. That's not what we asked. We asked, would you help us? Now, all the members on the Board of Commissioners, when you ran for public office, you said that the education needed to come up to the top, that it had been left by the side for a long time, and all those things like that. Well, the Board of Education has got $13 million unencumbered in our funds. So if you're not going to help us, then just say you're not going to help us. Because where I'm at on our board is we need to go do these projects, because this is lottery money and state sales tax money. The state has the ability to take every dime of that lottery money right now, and they can get real funny with your sales tax money. And that money's sitting over in the county's coffers, not in our coffers. But we need to do it. I'm not talking about us going through some very convoluted financial scheme for a $150 million bond that I might even question, Mr. Smith, that the county is using to come into a lot of cash and using the schools as a method to get it, kind of like the education lottery. The education is the cash cow for the lottery. I was opposed to it, but anyway. What we need to know from the Board of Commissioners is it's going to take about 2 years for Mr. Lassiter to complete these projects. We don't need you to write us a check today. We just endorse part of the money and how much, and we'll send you a bill when the bills come due. That'd be the way I'd say do it.
And I think the purpose of this conversation is to get to a point where you will have an answer in terms of what the Board of Commissioner needs to know and decide in order to give you the
Well, if
go-ahead
no
of
is
which
the
way
answer,
you're
I
gonna go.
understand no.
And nobody's
No is
saying
the
no.
answer, I understand no, okay? But if some kind of convoluted something else where it's gonna seem like yes, but it's not yes, then that don't work for me, and I want the public to know.
Okay.
Kind of maybe right now.
So,
Maybe, yeah.
yes, sir, what's your point?
I just want to make one point. The Board of Commissioners have not met on any financing of the school. So I don't know where they're getting this from about we are saying no. We haven't made that decision. We haven't, well, I thought this was our first meeting to hear about all, now we did get a letter from the school board.
That's right.
And, so.
And it was on time.
But we have not, yeah, but we have not met as a board. And I heard Mr. Doherty said we have agreed to borrow the money. Well, maybe I missed that meeting. I don't know. Okay, so I just wanted everybody to be clear that after this meeting, I'm sure we're going to meet and make the commissioner's decision. You know?
So what needs to happen before, in order to set the board up to make that decision? What kind of information do you need? What kind of meetings do you need? What needs to happen?
As I said before, we need Mr. Smith and all the financial people to sit down and come up with a plan.
You're talking about
Options, okay, options. With
Okay.
options, yes. Thank you.
So county staff to create options for financing. And does anything need to happen ahead of the county staff creating these options?
That would be with Davenport would be a good example.
That's right, with that.
Not just with Davenport, with Baldwin too. I think if you're gonna sit down and talk about what you're gonna do for us, you need our finance person there too. I see county staff.
That's school finance.
I think that's a good
So
idea.
Davenport County Finance and school finance.
Finance and that's for us to meet.
City, I mean, the school district.
I think that's a good idea of every county.
School finance and the other person you said?
Well, it would just be the school administration, including the finances. Because obviously they hold the key to the cost, those type of things. We have.
Okay, so we need a meeting with the city and school system administration, your finance people, and Davenport to figure out what the lay of the land is. And then from that, they'll draft options for the... Does anything else need to happen in between here and here? Yes, sir?
I would like to see, before you start putting hard dollar figures down, and if these two groups have met, I haven't been aware of that, I haven't been aware of meeting, but I would like for our facilities, Mr. Mayo, I would like for our facilities committee to meet with the Wayne County's facility directors to look at all this construction we're talking about and maybe come back with some ideas about the very best priorities. I mean, I'm not saying to change the board's mind, Mr. Grantham, but to those two groups to come back together, our facilities group and the county's facility group, and be able to tell us about all the buildings we have and what they would cost, and maybe then the prioritizing might take a different slant. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying it might, because, you know, we're all talking about the dollars here, and I just want to have a good hard look at the people who are studying the facilities to come back to this group, or at least to report it out to the finance groups before that was finally made. I would just like for those two groups to have at least one conversation.
Okay, so what I put up there, that before they meet with Davenport, the facilities, just a combined elected official staff committees on both sides? You're opposing
I
it?
disagree.
If it doesn't make sense to anybody
I
else.
trust this school board to have the ability to make recommendations on what's needed in the school system, and I, as a commissioner, am not on the school board.
All right, then let me just say, wait just a minute. If that's the case, then, if that's the case, I'm sorry, let me interrupt you. If that's the case, then we go with the middle school that they suggested, and this meeting is unnecessary.
Okay, wait
Let
a
me say
minute.
one thing, please.
All right.
I've only been on this board 2.5 years. So sometime back, prior to me getting on this board, Ms. Smith, Mr. Grantham, that board collectively came together and put together a 2007 facilities
Yeah.
plan. And at that time, they sent it to the county government, and I think everybody was in agreement we were gonna do that. Well, here we are, 6 years removed, and we still haven't received all the funding that we needed to complete that. So we've done bits and pieces, what we can afford to do, what we had monies to do. We jumped around and took care of what the most pressing needs on it were. Now, we met, and Dr. McFadden, we met with the commission board, and the school board met, and Dr. McFadden presented numbers once again back when, April, March, presented numbers to support, there again, these guys must have had a vision in 2007 because the numbers have not changed that drastically.
Okay.
The growth is probably still pretty much where it was at, exception of Spring Creek has got some additional growth. The numbers were amazingly accurate. Even though they predicted these in 2007, they did not change that much. So, you know, and look, guys, I'm just saying, we've sent this over, we've done our
So
studies.
you trust the prior plan to still be
And what I want
relevant?
to say is the travesty of all of this is, we've got kids who don't have desks to sit in.
Yes.
We've got kids who don't have, they can't sit, my son can't sit in a chair at a lunch table unless he runs to the lunchroom. So while we're doing all these meetings, and I know that I'm not against the meetings, how many meetings do we have to understand? Let's get in a bus and let's all of us right now, how many's in here? 30? Let's go to ACOP and try to get us a plate of lunch today. Or let's go to Spring Creek and try to get in a desk.
Okay,
You know,
okay.
that's the sad
So
part about it.
here's what we're gonna do. You had your hand up first and we'll just go zing, zing, zing.
I just wanted to talk to Mr. Gamari's suggestion about the facilities committees meeting. I'm not familiar with how the county's facility committees are, but our facility committees, in fact, all our committees really are not for the purpose of making overall plans for the board. They're to have discussions so that they can make some recommendations to the board, because they change every year. Every time the committees change, so it's not like we have continuity over facilities. People that have been on the facility committee this past year were not on it the year before. So having the two facilities committees meet together wouldn't really accomplish anything from our perspective.
Okay, your point?
That's basically what I was going to say, Mr. Grantham, is that the facilities committee for Wayne County, Commissioner Cromartie, it's the county. It has to do with commissioners only. It had what the facilities of Wayne County is doing, and we own as a county, the maintaining of our facilities. It has nothing to do with the Board of Education. This is a county situation that we have got to come to a conclusion about. My point is this: why don't somebody just go ahead and do what we need to do on these first three priorities with the promise that the county will come up with the money?
Okay.
Why don't we do that?
Before we get into that discussion, your point?
Well, I've had very little to say, but I came on the board in December, and all the information that I've received from the school board so far, it's central attendance, Spring Creek, and Charlotte Gaycott. As far as I'm concerned, the priorities have already been set.
Okay. Okay, your point?
I just wanted to say, you're talking about the 2007 plan. The first plan was sent to the county commissioners in January of 2003. The plan that we have today pretty much mirrors that plan. We put together a plan on the Board of Education in the year 2002 on December the 17th, and we worked it through the Christmas holidays and presented that in January of 2003. Commissioners, on several occasions, and one time we loaded up on buses with the commissioners and we went to all these projects and we did look at those and we did prioritize those projects. Mr. Bell, I think you rode the bus with us. But anyway, and you did too, I think, on the county commission. So, I mean, that part's already been done. And I know that you might not necessarily have been to all of those different schools, but that process has taken place, Mr. Lamar. But we're at that crossroads where we're either going to move forward with it now 13 years later, or we're not going to do anything, or we're just going to sit here at an impasse, like as somebody mentioned.
It does sound like you all want movement.
We need some definitive answers, and if the finance people need to get together and figure out how they want to present it to both boards and let us make our decisions and vote on it, that's fine. But I don't think we need to delay that process any further. We need to move forward. But I really feel like these 3 projects here basically can be shovel-ready, the renovations. We still have some discussion on Grantham School, and I think that needs to be kind of separated out, and we move forward with that, and then let's come back to the table after we've got those 3 renovations underway. Let's come back to the table and let's say, okay, now let's get our heads together about Grantham.
Okay, we've got a comment here and then over here.
I apologize, Mr. Smith, for keep calling your name, but I'm going to make this suggestion again, and then I'm going to ask for an adjournment. We still need to let them get together and present a plan. And I think we can end this meeting because there's nothing we can do by keep talking about this before they can submit a plan, a proposal for some alternatives. There's nothing we can do, really.
When you say they, you're talking about the finance?
The financial. Right, yeah.
Yeah, the administration, Davenport County School Finance.
That's
Your
right.
point?
I'm trying to simplify it again. Mr. West said earlier about the $13 million, about them borrowing half of it, or borrowing the whole thing. If we can pay our $6.5 million up front, they're willing to pay their $6.5 million if they want to borrow that. And it seems we could do the 3. We could walk out here today with the 3 ready to go. And then Grantham would be the next thing we need to push and to get through.
Okay. Your comment.
My comment is that I would by no means want to divvy from this. It's time to, I think, to understand what we're going to. I'm a visual learner, and I like to see. I certainly wouldn't want to adjourn. I do, though I do agree with Mr. Bell that we see what finance has to do before we move on as commissioners. But certainly, I'm a visual learner, and we've asked Jimmy Height to present conceptual plans of all 3 of those that you're indicating, Mr. Pridgeon, to move forward on those 3 items, and which has come from over here to the right also. So those 3 concepts have been drawn up along with Grantham and along with your chairman Grantham has indicated that he would like to see conceptual plans for the one school in Grantham and one of the schools left, the elementary, I believe, and the middle school being built. And those conceptual plans have been drawn out and will be produced by Mr. Height also. So I certainly wouldn't want to adjourn the meeting. And if we want to move around on this, we certainly can. We can put him up here now and wait and eat later. It doesn't matter. But I will tell you this, is that the commissioners are ready to move, but we haven't met to make any decisions, as Mr. Cromartie and Mr. Bell has so indicated, is that we are not ready today to make any decisions. We're just here to listen and to make sure that we're all at the same table at the same time. And then when the county gets its finances through Davenport to look at where we are, where we will be, and just to give us a 5-year plan of monies that we need elsewhere in the county, because we're spending taxpayers' dollars. We're making education a top priority. I think we have come out the gate in December, November, from January telling the board of the people of that. So that was just a comment. I'm ready to move forward too, but to make a commitment, you can't do that right now.
Your comment?
Let me talk about what I can only speak to what I need to know as a commissioner before making a decision on that. And I think that's where you were going on that. First thing I need to know is, are we going to separate this out? And if we are going to separate this out, how
Renovations,
much?
construction?
These 3 items, if we're going to separate that out. If we are, secondly, how much of a contribution would come from the county into this program? Whether it is in payments, cash amount, or whatever. I need to know what we would have to be contributing into that plan. Secondly, if we don't separate it out, I have to know in the future how much it would cost the county to build the 2 middle schools that we were talking about, one in Grantham and one in Spring Creek simultaneously. How much would it cost the county? I'm understanding around $600,000 per school. That's $1.2 million in contributions on an annual basis from the county into the schools. So there might be the contribution coming from the county if in fact we agree to build the 2 schools. If we agree to build the 1 school, are we talking about $600,000 in contribution on an annual basis? So even though they are intertwined, those are that's the information I need to know to make a decision. Thank you.
And that comes from Davenport.
No.
Yes, it does. I got it right here. I got it right here that says just about everything that you've asked, but we haven't had a chance to meet as a commission board to even discuss this. So that's what Commissioner Bell is saying.
Davenport would not be making the decision on whether to build a middle school in Grantham or a middle school.
Davenport can tell you if it's feasible or not and what the debt ratio is going to be and all these other things. Yes, they can. They can help us make that decision. So I'm going along with Commissioner Bell is that we need to do what we've already said we're going to do. We're going to have to meet together with Davenport and get the real story so everybody's got the same story, and the commissioner will decide what we're going to do. That's where we're at. We can't make a decision today.
No.
Other than we can support it.
I really understand what you're saying, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Mayor, but how can Davenport tell us, Commissioner, the plight of the school system? It's just like me walking in to take over Dr. Taylor's job. I don't want it, first of all. Now, there's some intricacies that Davenport, with all their expertise on finance, don't know, because they may think a school is good there, but they don't know the interest. I guess they can bring the data in and, deduce what is important. But my point is, I don't hear the school board being a part of this conversation. I'm hearing Davenport, but I don't hear Barwick, who knows our finances in and out. So I'm just hoping, I'm really appealing, this is not a lecture to the commissioner, I'm really appealing that you would bring the school board into that equation.
Well, the reason not is because the decision's already been made by the school board what you want to do.
Yes.
The county has not made our decision. This is a county function. It has to do with county dollars. It has to do with everything that the county commissioners do. So it's not that we don't support what you're saying, but you have your things you do as a Board of Education. We do as county commissioners. What we're saying is that we are going to go to Davenport because they have a long history with the county, and it doesn't matter how much money you're talking about for education. I'll give an example. I've got a sheet here that says over the next 15 years or so, $257 million, okay? So we as a county commissioners have to look at this, and we have to see the big picture rather than just saying, I totally support what we're doing on these first 3, okay? That's not a problem. But we cannot give you a decision today on how we're going to finance it. We can't do it until we get with Davenport and have another meeting and get people involved. Now, at the same time, if the Board of Education, you're welcome to come to the Davenport meetings, but the key is that the final decision is going to have to be on the county commissioner side. The ball's in our court, so to speak. Okay?
Is that why y'all came up with your own plan for Grantham?
Yes.
I can't answer that. I don't think so.
It's not our own plan. It's not our plan.
I beg your pardon. You said in your meeting on several occasions, Mr. Chairman, that this is our plan. Let's get this right. This is our plan.
You're wrong.
You know I'm not wrong. Go back and watch your meeting.
Already have.
You said it. You said this is our plan. It's not the Board of Education's plan. It's our plan.
So no matter what you said or what everybody heard, say it now.
Okay, this
Make it
is,
clear.
first of all, it's not Steve King's plan. Let's make that perfectly clear off the
I
get-go.
did
So,
that.
well, that's the first thing. The second thing is that the plan that we had presented was a plan by Jimmy Height, who has presented several plans before the Board of Education and has several plans in Johnston County. And it just so happened that there is a Johnston County school that lays geographically on the same parcel that this one is in Grantham. Grantham was the second within the second year, not the first year of the other three that we're discussing today. It was a year later. The commissioners' consensus of the commission was to bring that plan along with the other three plans and make that plan a part of the other three plans. Maybe that's where you got confused, Mr. Pridgen, is that we wanted Grantham to be just as much a part of the first three, so it wouldn't get lost in the shuffle, because the letter that we received from the superintendent was that these three projects would be prioritized, but we would find funding for Grantham. And if the county commissions were going to find funding and we were going to be a part of this 50% funding, then we felt like, because we were asked to spend 50% of the funds too, that we would weigh in, we would have skin in the game. So we asked the commissioners, the Grantham School be moved up at the same time of the other three. That was the plan that we had looked at as having these four looked at the same time. It just so happened that Mr. Jimmy Hike was available within 5 days after this discussion. So I called Mr. Hike with Mr. Smith and had him to come over and present that conceptual plan.
I'm just saying.
Now, from where it took from there, that's, but I'm not going to argue.
I'm just saying, yeah, you are.
I think I had.
I'm just saying that you made the statement that this was your plan. And you did not include the school board, nor did you ask any questions as to why we had chosen a middle school or anything else in this situation. And I know this is not the direction.
No, I've been talking to Mr.
But these discussions needed to take place long before you showed.
That's right.
I understand.
Long before you showed.
I understand.
But we've got a situation where people in the community are going out and they're being spoon-fed, and they're saying, well, if you'll sign this petition, if you'll sign this petition, we'll give you 2 bananas instead of 1. And that's,
Okay.
You're speculating.
No,
You
I'm
two
not
guys-
speculating.
Let's let
I'm
somebody
telling
else
you,
talk.
I'm telling you
I got the
what I
same
know.
package. I got the same package.
Well, I'm glad you
Let
do.
him talk. Go ahead. You're building on
Yeah,
this point.
and I really wish we could rewind what the chairman of the Board of Commissioners said. Maybe I misunderstood something, because the 3 prongs for central attendance, the other plan, and Grantham School being separate, we were not asking that the Board of Commissioners finance half of Grantham School. It was just those top 3.
That's correct.
But maybe I misunderstood, because that's the reason I raised my hand, because I thought I heard you say, because you were being asked to finance half of Grantham, you wanted to come.
No, find funding to finance.
Find funding?
Find funding to finance.
Yeah, but find funding does not mean you pay. What we're trying to say to you is that whatever you do in finding funding for our new schools, we're gonna pay. That was our plan. Our plan was to ask you for 50% of that 13 million. And then whatever it costs for the school, we can't borrow money. We wanted our brothers, our big brothers, as I stated in our first meeting, to go out and get the fundings for us and allow us, because we have a financial officer who's already laid out for us hypotheticals of what it would cost at whatever percentage rate, even projecting in the future.
Right.
But what I'm missing is that we're not asking you to build a school for us or even pay for it. We just need you to borrow on the credit of Wayne County.
Right.
And our school system.
That's right.
We
And that's
can
why
pay for the school.
That's why we use Davenport, but forgive me if I have implied that it's my plan. I apologize. It is not my plan. It's only that the district that I represent, which is District 4, is Grantham and Rosewood. And when I saw Grantham was set back a following year and not made a part of the previous year that the other 3 were going to take place, I felt like it was my obligation to my constituents in Grantham. And I did get with Mr. John Grantham, Phil Grantham, and discuss this with him, that I felt like as the commissioner in that district to look after Grantham. Therefore, I wanted Grantham moved up with the other 3. Now, we'll go on record with that, so I think that's probably what you heard. I don't know. I'm just speculating because I don't know what you heard.
Okay,
but the point is that Grantham was not a part of the 3 according to the timeline that you gave us and what Davenport had given us. So I just wanted Grantham to be up with the other 3.
Okay, one more comment. We've got food out there in the hallway. We've got to regroup and figure out how we're moving forward. Okay?
The biggest, I guess where the confusion on the whole issue came from, whether or not you did or didn't have a plan, it really doesn't matter right now. If you say that what you're planning, I'll take the word of it. And we did talk about this, school grant amendment, but what I was telling you when we talked about it was the letter that we sent over was not that we would do these 3 projects and then we would do Grantham. We were saying that we wanted to pay for half of these 3 projects and then you borrow the money for us to do Grantham, but not we do the 3 projects and then build Grantham. That was probably where the confusion came in. And we want Grantham now.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't want to wait.
Okay.
But you were only going to borrow the money for that, like Mr. Cannon said.
We need to keep moving forward. Are you going to help us move forward?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good.
Mr. Doherty made an interesting comment a while ago in regards to maybe the Wayne County Board of Commissioners ad valorem tax money, their contribution could be the expenses at Grantham, the additional operating expense, and the additional operating expense for Spring Creek. Okay? Well, I might could get on board with that. We asked you to contribute $6 million for these 3 projects we got. But the Board of Education, as you know, has been pointed out to us, there's $13 million sitting in our interest as we speak. So we don't have to have them to fund these initial projects. We just don't need for them to get in our way, for want of a better way to say it. Also, Mr. Lasker has told us that it's going to take anywhere of up to 2 years to finish these 3 projects. There's $1 million a quarter in round numbers being contributed to our sales tax money as we speak. So in 2 years, there'll be an additional $8 million unless we have economic collapse in that account. So what I'm saying is if the Board of Commissioners would be willing to not have any heartache about additional expenses for the school that we proposed at Grantham and we proposed at Spring Creek, and that would be your contribution, then say that and we'll carry on.
Let me follow up on that if I could.
Okay, we've got food coming in.
This is very important.
Okay.
Nobody eats too much, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Because I think that is, and I'm just trying to get another alternative out on the table, and that is that resolves 5 items on your capital improvement plan. It resolves the 3 improvements, it resolves Grantham, it resolves the middle school in Spring Creek, and the contribution from the county is not for the 3 items. It is in fact funding of the increased funding of operation of those 2 new schools. That way the school board, in their recommendation, was to build 2 middle schools at the same time, saving dollars on those construction costs, because you would be mirroring that plan, using the same plan, but the contribution from the county. And again, I'm not proposing that we vote on anything, I'm just putting another option on the table. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we've got food ready to come in. We don't have food for everyone in the room, is my understanding.
What we're going to do is what we're going to do is we've got for the school staff, county staff, and board members, we're serving lunch. For all guests who are here, they have the grills next door. You can order off the meat. That's up to you guys, or you can run the heart, whatever you want to do. But that's how we've done it. But you guys stay here. Others, they have a grill next door if you want to go order food.
So let me ask, it's okay for you to start bringing in the food. Let me ask, are y'all willing to hear the presentation for informational purposes only, just in the name of closing the gap?
I am, yes.
Okay, so you'll bring in the food, just sit and relax for 10, 15 minutes.